Stop what you're doing and listen closely, because what is being said now is not for everyone. It is for you. The warning in the title is not noise, and the date does not matter as much as the pressure you have felt in your chest, in your sleep, and in the way your thoughts keep circling one question. Something shifted in you before you had words for it, and now the shift is asking to be named. You have been carrying a quiet unease that no casual advice has been able to settle. You may have been calling it confusion, but it is more precise than that. It is a signal. It is the kind of signal that arrives when heaven is trying to keep you from walking into a trap that looks ordinary at first glance. Stay with me, because what follows will name the signs, expose the pattern, and show you how to answer without panic. You know the feeling of waking up already tired, as if the room has been waiting for you to enter a conversation you never agreed to have. The phone screen lights up, the house is still, the cup of coffee sits untouched on the table, and yet your shoulders are already carrying something heavier than the morning. You move through the day, but your body moves like it is listening for danger behind the walls. Sometimes you feel it in your throat when you are about to answer a message too quickly. Sometimes you feel it in your hands when you keep checking the same thing twice. There is no need to pretend that this is only stress, because your spirit knows the difference between ordinary pressure and a pattern that keeps returning at the same door. The warning is not trying to frighten you, it is trying to spare you. And when the warning is spiritual, the body often hears it first. What is happening is not random, and it is not meant to humiliate you. It is a moment of discernment, a moment when protection is wearing the face of interruption, and correction is arriving with a quieter voice than fear expects. You have wanted a clear road, but what is being revealed is that not every open road is safe, and not every closed door is punishment. Some doors are sealed because the room behind them would train you to repeat an old wound. Some invitations come wrapped in urgency because urgency is the easiest disguise for a snare. By the end of this message, you will recognize attention. You need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. Signs that matter. The pattern behind the pressure, the place where your peace has been threatened, and the way to answer without surrendering your steadiness. None of this is about making you suspicious of everything. It is about making you awake to what has been trying to pass as harmless. There is a particular kind of silence that falls in a kitchen late at night when the dishes are done. The light over the sink is still on, and your mind is busier than the room. You stare at the counter and realize that your own heart has started asking different questions than it used to ask. You're not dramatic about it, but you're no longer comfortable with what used to feel normal. The old ease is gone, and that loss has made you uneasy because you have not yet named what replaced it. It is in that in-between place that traps usually appear, because the soul is most vulnerable when it is tired of waiting. You may have thought your sensitivity was a weakness, but it is actually the reason you can feel the edge of a false path before your feet are fully on it. What seems inconvenient may be mercy. What seems delayed may be rescue. And what seems like a small check in your spirit may be the very thing that keeps you from stepping into a place you would later have to escape. You are the kind of person who does not miss things lightly. You notice the tone that changed in a text message, the strange pause in a conversation, the way a room feels different when the wrong motive is present. That is not fragility. That is discernment in formation. It is also why this warning reaches you more deeply than it reaches others, because you have been living with the burden of seeing more than you can easily explain. You have probably asked yourself in one private moment or another, why does this feel off? That sentence is not a flaw. It is a clue. The trap depends on you dismissing that clue, because once you call the signal imagination, the door opens wider. But if you honor the unease, you begin to reclaim authority over your own steps. A chosen heart is not a careless heart. A chosen heart learns to pause when peace is interrupted. The pressure has not only come from circumstances, it has also come from the noise around you, from the constant pull to explain yourself, answer quickly, and keep proving that you are fine. A draining atmosphere does not always announce itself with obvious malice. Sometimes it arrives as a room where everyone is performing certainty while your spirit is quietly shrinking. Sometimes it comes through the habit of checking a message 10 times because you fear what silence might mean. Sometimes it is the subtle invitation to rush toward a decision because waiting would force you to listen to your own conscience. You can feel the difference in your body when something is forcing movement instead of offering peace. Your breath shortens, your shoulders harden, your mind starts negotiating with what your spirit already knows. That is how pressure becomes persuasion. It asks for speed where wisdom asks for stillness. There is an old pattern in Scripture of people being warned before a snare took shape, and the warning was often simple enough to miss if pride was in the room. Joseph heard a dream that seemed impossible before the famine ever showed its face. Noah built before the rain became visible. Lot was urged to leave before the city looked dangerous to the eye. The point was never spectacle. The point was obedience before evidence. Your life is being touched by that same principle in a quieter form. You are being asked to trust what peace has been telling you before the damage becomes obvious. The trap wants you to wait until it is undeniable. Wisdom asks you to move when it is merely clear. That difference can spare you a season of regret. If you pretend nothing is happening, the pattern does not disappear. It repeats. It returns in a slightly different costume, in another conversation, through another door. And each return makes your heart a little less responsive. That is how sensitivity becomes dullness, and dullness becomes habit. You start saying yes where you meant to wait. You start ignoring the check in your chest because ignoring it once felt easier than explaining it. You start calling peace fear and fear peace until the inner compass loses its language. That is why the warning matters now. It is not trying to make you suspicious of life. It is trying to keep your inner hearing clean. The cost of ignoring a signal is rarely instant collapse. More often it is slow confusion, and confusion is expensive. If even one of those signs landed inside you, if your shoulders eased when I named the pressure, type 888 in the comments and come back to me. That simple code is a small acknowledgement that you recognize the warning before the trap became normal, and that recognition matters more than volume. It is not magic, and it is not performance. It is agreement. If your spirit said yes while your mind was still sorting through the details, let that yes be visible. Type 888, and then return here with the same attention you brought to the first line. What you are honoring is not a number. You are honoring the mercy that interrupts a wrong turn before it becomes a wound. Stay with me, because the deeper reason for the warning is closer than the warning itself. What looks external is only the surface, because the real conflict is always deeper than the event that triggered it. The pressure you have felt may be exposing an old habit of surviving by control, by overthinking, by saying yes too quickly to keep the peace. You may have learned to trust clarity only when it arrives wrapped in certainty, but spiritual discernment often arrives as restraint before explanation. That is why the next layer matters. The issue is not only what is happening around you, it is what the situation is trying to awaken inside you. And if that inner layer stays unnamed, the same trap can return in another form even after the outer one passes. This is the point where your life stops being managed by reaction and starts being guided by recognition. The next truth is going to show you how that happens. The root is not that you are naive. The root is that you have been trained to believe that peace must be earned by staying available to everything. That belief is exhausting. It makes you answer what you should have paused to weigh. It makes you apologize for taking time to think. It makes you feel guilty when your spirit withdraws from what your mind cannot justify yet. The trap feeds on that guilt. It says that if you do not move now, you will miss your chance. But what it often hides is that the real chance is to remain free. Control feels safe until it becomes a cage. Approval feels comforting until it costs your discernment. And once you see that, the urgency loses some of its power. Your mind can explain away what your body already knows. Your body tightens before your mind catches up. Your spirit notices the difference between invitation and pressure before your language can describe it. That is why a decision can look reasonable and still feel wrong in your chest. You sit in the car outside the store, holding the steering wheel a little too hard, and you know something is off even before you can list why. You open the message again, then again, because part of you wants proof before obedience. But the proof is often in the repeated unrest. Anxiety blurs everything at once. Discernment simplifies. Anxiety keeps you circling. Discernment tells you where the line is. They are not the same voice, and you are being trained to hear the difference. Some people will not understand the change taking place in you, and not every room can welcome a person who has stopped abandoning their own peace. You will feel that when conversations begin to drain instead of strengthen, when familiar voices start pressing you toward a version of yourself that no longer fits. The danger is not always hostility. Sometimes the danger is familiarity. A place can be old enough to feel safe and still be too small for what is being formed in you now. That is why you do not need to demonize people to discern a pattern. You only need honesty. If a room makes you shrink, notice it. If a conversation leaves you hurried and foggy, notice it. If a relationship survives on your confusion, that is not connection, it is leverage, and you are being taught to release leverage. The strategy of the trap is rarely dramatic. It wears down your attention with lesser urgencies. It fills your day with messages, tasks, and obligations until the one thing you need to discern never gets a quiet hour. It turns direction into noise so that obedience feels inconvenient. It tells you to postpone your pause until later, and later never quite arrives. You can see it in a schedule that looks full but fruitless, in a conversation that never reaches honesty, in a habit of saying yes simply because saying no would require a boundary. The trap is not only a wrong choice, it is a distracted life that cannot hear the right one. That is why the warning is merciful. It interrupts the blur. Something in you has already started to resist that blur. You are no longer willing to pretend that every open door deserves your hand on the knob. You are beginning to understand that hesitation can be holy when it protects your peace. This is the threshold where many people turn back toward old habits, because old habits ask less of them. But you are being invited to stand still long enough to see what is behind the pressure. It may be that the delay you hated was the buffer that saved you. It may be that the closed path was a shield, not a denial. The next movement matters because it will show you how the warning is not just about stopping, it is about being redirected. The image that now carries this whole message is a gate in the middle of a field after rain. At first, the gate looks ordinary, just wood, hinges, and a rusted latch catching the afternoon light. You walk toward it because something on the other side seems promising, but as you get closer, you notice the mud at its base, the broken fence line nearby, and the strange stillness that makes the air feel heavier. The gate was never the problem. The problem was assuming that every gate was meant to be opened just because it stood in your path. You have stood before similar gates in your life, in work, in relationships, in choices that seemed timely, and you felt something in your chest pause before your hand reached forward. That pause was not indecision, it was mercy speaking through your nerves. When you first saw the gate, you thought the issue was simple access. But now you notice that the field behind it has signs of being watched, of being used, of being left half open to weather and trespass. The warning is not telling you to fear every threshold. It is teaching you to read the state of what lies beyond it. Some gates open into pasture, some open into ground that will cost you more than it gives. You can feel this in your breathing when you stand still long enough to listen. The old impulse says rush. The new discernment says wait. The old identity says prove yourself by entering. The new wisdom says protect what has been entrusted to you. What looks like hesitation is actually a form of reverence. There is a reason the gate has been in your sight for a while without fully opening. The wait has been exposing what kind of voice gets your attention. Does urgency get it first, or peace? Does the fear of missing out move you more than the quiet nudge that says not yet? The trap often uses the language of opportunity to smuggle in a loss of clarity. It flatters your hunger by pretending to feed it. It looks like readiness, but it lacks stillness. It looks like motion, but it is really drift. The gate is teaching you to tell the difference. And once you tell the difference, your inner life stops being ruled by every passing sound. The gate also exposes what kind of weariness has been following you. When you are tired, any opening can look like relief. That is how people step through things they would have never chosen in a rested state. Tiredness makes compromise look like relief. Tiredness makes a poor fit feel like destiny. So the warning comes not to accuse you, but to restore your strength before your judgment is taxed again. You are not being denied, you are being steadied. And the steadiness matters because a tired heart is easier to rush than a clear heart. The trap depends on fatigue because fatigue shortens the distance between impulse and action. The gate has not only been standing in front of you, it has been teaching you how to stand. That is the hidden gift inside the interruption. You have been learning to wait without becoming passive, to notice without spiraling, to decline what drains you without becoming harsh. These are not small lessons. They are the difference between living reactively and living with authority. If you miss that, you may mistake the warning for inconvenience. If you receive it, you will see that the pause itself was part of the protection. The gate is not simply a boundary, it is a teacher, and what it teaches will shape the next choice you make when a similar door appears. The pressure that once felt like a threat is now beginning to look like instruction. You can feel the difference between being summoned by fear and being guided by clarity. One shoves, the other waits until your spirit can breathe. That distinction is what keeps you from misnaming mercy. You were not abandoned at the gate. You are being shown how to stand before it without surrendering your peace. What comes next is not escape from discernment. It is obedience inside it. And once you learn that, every false urgency loses some of its pull. The gate has a lock and the lock has a key, but the key is not force. The key is the willingness to let the moment stay unresolved until truth is clear. You may hate that at first because your mind wants finish lines, but the soul often matures in the unfinished space. In that space, you stop mistaking movement for progress. You stop treating every possibility like an assignment. You begin to ask whether the way forward actually expands peace or merely feeds anxiety. That question changes everything. It keeps you from calling confusion a calling and pressure a path. The gate is not punishing you by waiting. It is protecting you from entering too soon. There is a strange kindness in being slowed down before a mistake becomes irreversible. You may only notice it later, when a conversation that once felt urgent now seems empty, or when a door that once glittered in your imagination now appears ordinary and overgrown. That is often how protection reveals itself, not with fireworks, but with distance, not with spectacle, but with the quiet relief of not having stepped through. If you honor that relief, you begin to trust your own discernment again. If you ignore it, you train yourself to dismiss the very signals that keep you safe. The gate is asking you to trust the pause more than the pressure. There was a moment when the image started to change, and you felt it without needing anyone to explain it. The gate did not disappear, but the latch began to feel lighter in your mind, as if what mattered was no longer whether it opened fast. What mattered was whether you were ready. That shift is the deeper warning and the deeper grace. It means the question is no longer, can I get through? The question is, should I enter at all? That is where discernment becomes strength. It is where the gate stops being an obstacle and becomes a threshold of wisdom. Hold that thought, because the next thing to name is the most important form of readiness. The gate also stands for the places in your life where your old self wants to return. It looks familiar because it once taught you how to survive. It promised access, speed, and relief. But what it gave was a cycle that kept you too tired to notice what you were losing. You may have been tempted to open it just to end the tension, but the tension itself is what revealed the danger. The old self trusts urgency. The new self trusts peace. The old self says every closed moment is an insult. The new self knows some closures are shelter. You are standing between those two ways of living, and the warning is helping you choose well. If you have felt the metaphor turning in your own body, if you have sensed that the gate is more than a gate and the pause is more than a pause, type "Eu vejo isso" in the comments and come back to me. Let that phrase mark the moment when recognition moved from your mind into your own record. The gate is opening now in a deeper way, not by force but by understanding. What was once only a warning is becoming a map. Type "Eu vejo isso" and return here with the same clarity you are being given now. The path ahead is not about rushing. It is about noticing what the rush was trying to hide. You are no longer dealing only with the outer gate, because the real turning point is inside your own attention. What you have been shown is not only where to stop, it is how to live once you stop. This is the place where spiritual maturity begins to replace survival reflex. The old habit of forcing an answer starts to lose its authority when peace becomes more persuasive than fear. You do not need louder confirmation than the one already living in your chest. The deeper pattern is that you have been learning to trust restraint as much as movement. That learning will shape every decision from here, and it will keep shaping them long after this message ends. The root of many traps is not evil in its most obvious form. It is the seduction of speed. It is the belief that if you do not act now, your life will somehow narrow forever. That belief presses on people in ordinary places, in a store aisle, in a chat thread, in a hallway after a tense conversation, in the quiet moment before sleep when unresolved things start sounding urgent. You have probably felt the tug to settle a matter too quickly, just so your mind could rest. But a restless mind is not the same thing as a wise inner witness. Wisdom can sit still without panic. Wisdom can leave a question open long enough to hear whether it is being answered by peace or by fear. That is the difference that saves you. You have been taught, perhaps without anyone saying it directly, to equate delay with loss. But some delays are boundaries that keep you from being rushed into a fit that would later cost you more than waiting ever could. The sensation in your body often tells the truth before your reasoning does. Your stomach tightens, your jaw clenches, your eyes stay open longer than they should. Your spirit says, "Not yet," while your fear says, "Hurry." That split is exhausting, and the trap depends on you obeying exhaustion. It wants you too tired to discern. It wants you too pressured to pause. But if you rest inside the pause, the pressure weakens. And when the pressure weakens, the lie loses its costume. There is also a deeper layer of fear that hides beneath the surface of urgency, the fear of missing what everyone else seems to be catching. That fear is ordinary, but it is costly. It makes you compare your timing to someone else's. It makes you believe that a hurried opportunity is better than a wise one. It makes you think that being late is the worst possible thing, when in truth, being misaligned is worse. The old survival pattern says, accept the first opening. The new pattern says, wait for the right one. That change can feel unsettling because it asks you to release the habit of grasping. Yet grasping is often what makes the hand sore. Open hands learn to receive without panic. You may notice this most clearly in your private thoughts, in the sentence you do not say out loud, "What if I miss it?" That question has ruled many people more than any actual enemy has. It turns every choice into a test, every pause into a failure, every boundary into a threat. But the warning is not pushing you toward fear. It is exposing fear so that fear no longer disguises itself as wisdom. The trap does not need to persuade the whole of you. It only needs one anxious part to take the wheel. That is why the next step is not dramatic. It is simple. It is the step of refusing to hand your authority to the loudest feeling in the room. The body often knows when the spirit is being asked to overextend. You feel it when your calendar has no breathing room, when a conversation seems to keep circling the same unresolved edge, when your heart is trying to say no, but your mouth keeps saying maybe. That split creates inner noise. The noise is not guidance, it is strain, and strain is what the trap counts on, because a strained person is easier to rush into agreement. You are learning to spot the difference between true alignment and temporary relief. True alignment may be quieter at first. Temporary relief is usually louder, faster, and more expensive. The warning helps you choose the quieter mercy. The gate in the field remains the same, but your relationship to it is changing. You're no longer standing before it as someone desperate to prove readiness. You are standing there as someone who can wait for clarity without shame. That is a different posture, and it changes everything. It means the old leverage has broken. It means urgency can no longer manipulate you as easily as before. It means the next step will not come from pressure, but from peace. And peace does not need to hurry to be real. When that becomes your standard, traps lose their easiest entrance. You are also being shown that not every closed road is meant to be reopened by your effort. Some things stay closed because they were never yours to carry. Some invitations keep returning because you keep feeling responsible for what was never assigned to you. The gate can be a test of stewardship. Will you guard what is precious, or will you spend it on what is merely urgent? That question is not abstract. It touches your time, your attention, your energy, and your yes. The warning is training you to steward those things more carefully. And stewardship is one of the most spiritual responses a person can make to pressure. There is a moment in every discernment where the soul stops arguing with what it already knows. That moment is quiet, but it is decisive. It may come while you are washing a mug in the sink, or sitting in traffic, or staring at a ceiling fan after midnight. Suddenly the body stops defending the old answer. The heart stops making excuses. The mind finally admits that the unease has been coherent all along. That is when the gate stops being hypothetical and becomes a boundary you can honor. And once you honor it, the trap loses its timing. It cannot swallow a person who has learned to wait. The field behind the gate is not the only place being exposed. Your own habits are being exposed too. The habit of rushing to soothe discomfort. The habit of interpreting every delay as rejection. The habit of over-explaining to people who have already shown you their limits. The habit of giving your attention away before your spirit has agreed. These habits are not who you are, but they have been acting like a small inner current, pulling you toward familiar strain. The warning is interrupting that current. It is teaching you to notice before you drift. And noticing is how the current weakens. You do not have to become suspicious to become WW. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.